Hello everyone, welcome back to Fibromyalgia Fighter. My name's Jamie Potts, and this time this one's going to be all about me and my story. Hi guys, so if you watched my introduction video, the first video on this channel, thank you very much. If you're back to watch this video again as a result of that, indeed, again, thank you. If you haven't seen the first video, do go and check that out. If you like what you see, if you like what's going to be coming up on this channel, we'll be talking about that towards the end of the video, then do feel free to subscribe. So this video is going to be all about me, all about my life up until the point I was diagnosed, and indeed after I was diagnosed, and the place that I'm currently at, just to give some background so that you guys know what I'm talking about when we go into future videos. So I was born in Essex in the UK and lived a perfectly healthy, normal life until the age of 7, when we decided as a family, my mum, my dad and myself, to move to New Zealand, which was a bit of a culture shock. Obviously, being only 7 years old, it's not a problem at all. So moved to New Zealand, lived there for a couple of years, loved it, really cool place. If you've never been and you want somewhere to go to visit, I can think of nowhere better than to go to New Zealand. So if you've never been, do think about it at some point in the future. It is a very beautiful place. You do have to go for more than just a week, and probably more than just 2 weeks as well, just to be able to experience it all. And my recommendation would be to get a camper van and just go around the North Island, then head down to the South Island and head around there, and just make your way around everything in a kind of loop kind of order if you can. We were in New Zealand for 2.5 years, and then we decided that we missed all of our family far too much, so we came straight back to the UK and settled in Norfolk in England, which is over on the eastern side, the bit that juts out on the eastern side. So I have lived in Norfolk mostly since then, which would have been in 2004. Again, school life, perfectly normal, perfectly healthy. The only thing I ever had wrong with me really was asthma. At the age of 11, I had a problem with one of my knees, whereby this joint here popped out. So instead of looking like this, like it does now, it kind of looked more like this. And that happened whilst I was sat on the sofa playing on the PlayStation. I saw it happen and was like, that doesn't look good, what do? So I stood up, straightened my leg, and it went straight back in. And then, being a 12 year old male, sat back down and carried on playing on the PlayStation, and that was the end of it, until about probably 2 or 3 months later, when I was still struggling to walk on it, and we finally went to the hospital to see if there was anything wrong with it, and it turns out there was nothing wrong with it. It was just healing itself, so that's all fine now. Yeah, as I said, completely healthy. Looking back on my school years since I've had fibromyalgia, we can see signs that it was in existence, that obviously we weren't particularly aware of at the time. But things like, so when you're at school and you get a cold, and it gets to be quite a bad cold, and you have to take a few days off school because you've got too much of a cold, you're too run down. For most children, that's maybe 1, 2, 3 days off school, maybe a week most. For me, it was 1, 2, 3 days a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, and very rarely, but sometimes 4 weeks. And we just thought that I just got really bad colds. The asthma obviously didn't help. I would cough a lot, and that kind of thing. But looking back on it, potential for fibromyalgia to have been there and to have been making things worse for me, basically. Also, during towards the end of my school years / the beginning of my working life, I can't quite recall which, I know I was at least 17, at least I think I was at least 17, we had a rather close family member pass away really suddenly and unexpectedly. They weren't elderly or anything, and obviously that affected us all quite emotionally. It didn't affect me physically in any way whatsoever, but they say that fibromyalgia can be brought on by triggers of any kind, and that's a potential trigger. I'm not going to talk too much about that in this video because that'll be part of the mini series that's going to come straight after this video, so we'll be starting as of next Friday. But that's just something also to bear in mind. After school, I decided, unlike pretty much the rest of my friends, that I wasn't going to go to university. All of my friends went off. I decided I'd rather work, earn some money to be able to spend on myself, rather than go to university for further education. So I started a job working as sort of customer services or sales at a department store for a year and a half or so. Then moved on to a different store for around 4 or 5 months, again working sales. And then I finally landed what was not my dream job, but close to it. So since a very young age, since the age of about 4, I've wanted to be a pilot. I still do. I don't think I ever will be able to become one because it costs too much money. But I applied to become cabin crew at EasyJet, and I went for the assessment day at Luton. Got through to the interview stage, all that kind of thing. Was told I'd hear back in a few weeks, and literally the next day was driving into work, had just arrived at work, got a phone call, and they were offering me a job. So started that a month or two later, and moved away from the family home to go and live south of London, based at London Gatwick, flying for EasyJet as cabin crew, which is probably my favourite job that I've ever done. I'd love to be able to do it again, but the condition means that it would definitely just be a no-go. So that was really fun. EasyJet, for those of you who don't know, if you're not from Europe, or even if you are from Europe and you just don't know, they're a short haul airline, so you don't get to see very many places working with EasyJet. You tend to just do a flight to a place and then a flight back, and then depending on the length of those 2 flights, you would then maybe do another one and then another one back, and on very, very rare occasions another one and then another one back. Sometimes, very rarely, we would have night stops, so we would stop in Amsterdam, Copenhagen, Madrid, Milan and Inverness whilst I was working there. So sometimes we would do 3 flights in a day and stay in one of those places. Sometimes we would do 5 flights and stay in one of those places, and if we were very, very lucky, we'd do 1 flight and stay in one of those places. Again, was relatively healthy. I would say problems started to occur when I started working at EasyJet. So I started to get more colds, I started to pick up more viruses, that kind of thing. Now, that's not necessarily unexpected, because obviously if you're working in a long metal tube at 38,000 feet with recirculated air going round and round, with 180 passengers on board, you're going to pick up lots of bugs and things. And if you've not got a particularly good immune system, which obviously at the time we didn't realise that I probably don't, I picked up a lot of colds. I took quite a lot of illness compared to a lot of other people. Carried on working at EasyJet for a couple of years, really enjoyed it. Really, really, really enjoyed it. Loved the lifestyle, loved the friends I made, loved everything about it. Location, everything, absolutely loved it. And then one day we were working a flight, I can't remember where it was to or anything, and there was some heavy turbulence, and I'd been standing in the rear galley. Obviously, turbulence is a thing that as cabin crew you get used to.
I'm not sure I understand.
Thank you very much, Siri. I didn't ask you to understand, but it's something you get used to, but sometimes you can get hit by moderate to severe turbulence unexpectedly, which was the case in this instance. And I had been leaning against something, and the turbulence actually pushed me back, and there was a metal corner of a trolley. So if we imagine it, it probably looked something like this, but obviously metal, so this kind of corner, and the square of my back went straight into that corner, and it hurt moderately to begin with, and I took some painkillers, or I took some paracetamol on board, and finished the rest of my duty, which was another, I think that was actually the first or second flights. I had another couple of flights after that, because it was a 4-sector day, which means you do 4 flights. And got back home, and it seemed okay. There was no major problems or anything. Carried on working the next few weeks, no real problems. Could feel it was starting to get a little bit achy some of the time, but that was it, nothing more than that. And then I remember working at the front of the aircraft one day, and we had an extremely hard, well, not an extremely hard, but we had a hard landing into an airport. I'd like to just point out that a hard landing, because this is a really common misconception that people have, but a hard landing isn't a bad landing. A hard landing is a safe landing. Sometimes operationally, hard landings are mandatory. So for example, if you have really strong winds, you're going to want to make a hard landing just to make sure you get the aircraft down. The reason for that is because if you're trying to make a nice soft landing and you are flaring for too long, flaring is the process whereby you're low enough that you cut the power to the aircraft and then just pitch it slightly so it lands kind of like this. That's called flaring. If it's windy and you're trying to flare to make a nice soft landing, if you get a sudden gust of wind and are blown like that, then you're off the runway. So instead, when it's windy, you want to come down and you want to make a really nice just landing straight hard. Not too hard, but hard. Anyway, one day we had a hard landing, and it was hard. We had passengers sort of not screaming, but making noises as if, ouch, that hurt. And it hurt me, it hurt my back. And after the passengers had disembarked, my cabin manager, who was sat next to me, sort of said, are you okay? And I said, not really. And I explained about the turbulence incident a few weeks prior. I took some painkillers again, and they didn't really help this time. But anyway, carried on working for another couple of weeks. At this time, I wasn't actually living anywhere in that area. I was actually commuting, so we would tend to work 5 days of working and then 2 or 3 days off, or 4 days working and then 2 or 3 days off, that kind of pattern. And what I was doing is I was driving all the way back home to my parents' house in Norfolk on my days off, and I was staying at a hotel on my days on, because we got a good discounted rate, and I just found that kind of lifestyle to be better for me mentally wise. I could come back, see my friends, and do the things that I enjoyed doing. So one day I was in a group of days on, and my girlfriend was staying, or my girlfriend at the time was staying with me at the hotel, and my alarm went off to wake me up for my duty, and normally that would mean that I would jump straight out of bed. I would go and start getting ready, because if you know anything about me, before I had fibromyalgia, I was the kind of person who would set an alarm for the minimal amount of time it took to get ready. So if I set an alarm to get up for work, it literally meant get up for work, otherwise you'll be late. Alarm went off, I didn't move, and I remember she was laying next to me and she said, are you not gonna get up? And I just said to her, I can't move. And she said, what do you mean you can't move? And I said, my back, there's something wrong, I can't move. And she was like, do you need me to call someone, a doctor, at the hospital, an ambulance? I was like, no, it'll be okay, I think. I said, but I can't move right now. And it took me probably a good 15-20 minutes to be able to move into a position where I could sit and then stand and eventually obviously walk, but obviously called in sick that day. When you call in sick, as with most companies, the company make a welfare call to you to check that there's nothing you need from them, and obviously to check the finer details. I was actually at the shop when they called because we needed to get some food to eat because we were at the hotel, and I'd left my phone at the hotel, so I didn't answer. They phoned my home phone instead, which obviously was where my parents were. And my parents answered and were really, really, really worried because they hadn't heard, or the way that it was described to them was that the company hadn't heard from me, and they were panicking quite badly. So when I got back to the hotel, I had messages, I had voicemails, that kind of thing, and I called them and I explained, look, I've hurt my back, I've just called in sick, that's all. Anyway, next couple of days went by, called in sick every day, every day I woke up it was really sore. Arranged to see a doctor when I went back home for my days off. Saw a doctor and he examined it. He said, yep, what's happened here is you've spasmed some muscles in your back. We're going to give you some strong painkillers, and they gave me codeine. And we're going to give you a muscle relaxant. So they gave me diazepam. It's the first time I'd ever had those drugs, those combinations of drugs. So they made me very drowsy, very woozy, and gave me kind of almost like a drunk effect. So they also signed me off work. I think initially for a couple of weeks was about it. And then what happened was my back just never really got better. I went back 2 weeks later, said to the doctor, hey, it's not got any better. Okay, we'll give you more drugs, we'll give you another sick note, absolutely fine. My girlfriend travelled to my parents' house to stay with me for a little while whilst I was obviously not well, and to help look after me. And I then went back to the doctor again after another couple of weeks and said, no, it's still really sore. I still can't do anything. And he checked again and he said, yeah, it's all still spasmed. He said, we'll sign you off, and we'll sign you off for a couple of months this time because that's really not going to get better anytime soon. And it was during this point, so I waited about a month or so, and by this point I'd been off of work for maybe 2.5 months. And I said to my family that I don't want to be paid for a job that I'm not doing. I said, I know I'm not well, I'm not fit to do my job, so I could just, I'm being honest about it, but with how I'm feeling at the moment, I can't do my current job, but if I could find a job sitting in an office, maybe I could do that. So I said, what I'm going to do is I'm going to call them, I'm going to hand in my resignation, and I'm going to try and find a new job where I can still live in the Norfolk area now, rather than back down south of London, and hopefully get a new job. So what happened was I handed in my notice. I went about a week later to give my IDs and stuff back, because obviously I had airside IDs for the airport and that kind of thing that needed handing back. and I applied for a couple of jobs, got interviews for the same week. Went for one job interview as a dentist's assistant. I don't think that's what they call them, but I can't remember the official name of it. But I went for a job as a dental assistant. They really liked me. They called me back literally as soon as I got home and offered me the job. But I had an interview the next day for a sales job. Now, I don't like sales at all. I'm not good at it. Can't do it. I'm not a salesperson. Customer services, I'm very good at, but sales, not at all. But went for that interview. They also offered me the job, and I took their job instead because it paid more, and that was literally the only reason. It paid more, and EasyJet, who I was working for as cabin crew, paid very, very well. And to have gone to the dental job would have been about a half a pay cut. It would have cut my pay in half essentially, whereas the sales job cut it by a lot, but it didn't cut it by half. So it's entirely money related, but I went for the sales job. Shortly after that, me and my girlfriend at the time found out that we were pregnant. Now, being young, very young at the time, being financially unstable, living with my parents at the time, left us with all kinds of problems, and it took us a long time to tell my parents because we were too scared to do it. My parents had found out anyway. Well, they had their suspicions initially, and they found out anyway because here in the UK, when you get pregnant, your doctor gives you, or the midwife, I don't know which, gives you what's called a bounty pack. It's a pack, looks exactly the same, the one they give to everyone. It's like a folder full of loads of information that you need to know. And we went on holiday for a week, about when she must have been at about 7 or 8 weeks along, and we had left the pack lying around, and my mother had gone into our room to tidy it up whilst we were gone, and she saw the pack obviously and found out. They went on holiday the week we got back, so we got back and literally the day later they went on holiday. And then when they came back, we all went out for a meal, and they said, are you pregnant? And we said, no. Anyway, about a week later, we told them, and we began looking for sort of accommodation that we could find ourselves so we could move out and be financially stable somehow. And then after 3 months of probation in my new sales job, I was called into the office for my probationary review, to the head office, and was told that they were letting me go. They explicitly said it wasn't anything to do with me or my personality or any of that kind of thing, or my customer services, which was why they brought me in the first place, because I had explained to them that I wasn't a good salesperson. And they'd said, that's fine, we'll give you the training you need for that, and that kind of thing. But they let me go because my sales just were not good enough, and there was a strong possibility going into that job that would be the case in the first place. But that was what they found. And so for that reason, they let me go, which I was kind of expecting when I went in for the probationary review. Anyway, on the way home, I told my girlfriend at the time, and I told my parents. And my mother, who worries quite a lot when about work and things, when it comes to me, was very worried. But I literally got myself home, applied for a few jobs, and by literally the very next afternoon I had a new job, which I was starting the following week. And I continued to apply for jobs because the job that I had got was only a temporary one. It was working as a mobile phone repairer in a factory, which wasn't an ideal job for me, but it was money, food on the table, that kind of thing. And then, so I was still applying for jobs, and there was a firm that I had wanted to work for previously, who I applied for. I got an interview with them, and I was offered the role and the money that I'd asked for as well, so I was very happy with that, and was given a starting date of a week or 10 days after our baby's due date. So what I did was I carried on working at the factory, and I took unpaid paternity leave from around 3 or 4 weeks before the baby was due. I hadn't told them that I had a new job lined up. I hadn't told them that I was planning on leaving or anything. The plan was to take the unpaid paternity leave so they would let me sort of be not working, and then call them after a week or so and let them know that I was leaving, I was resigning. So I had a couple of weeks just at home waiting for the baby to come along. Due date came, no sign of the baby, and my girlfriend went into labour on the Friday, which made it, I think, 6 or 7 days late. And I was due to start my new job on the Monday. So I went in, it was around a 17-hour labour. So my daughter Luna Lily was born at 3:10 on the 10th of March, and we...
Sorry, could you say that again? Sorry, I couldn't hear what you said.
I don't know what I'm saying that is causing it to think that I'm saying the S word, but apologies for that. So yeah, she was born, and we were kept in for a little while because a couple of reasons. One, she was very, very, very small when she was born. I think she weighed 5 pound 2, which is very small. Our midwife wasn't surprised by this, as in our midwife from home, not our midwife at the hospital, because both myself and my girlfriend at the time had Indian backgrounds, and apparently Indian babies with Indian backgrounds are notoriously small. So she wasn't surprised by this or worried about it at all when she came and saw Luna during her first week. But we had to stay in hospital a little bit longer until she took to feeding. We switched the bottle quite quickly because she wasn't taking to breastfeeding. And she was also looking slightly jaundiced, so we had that to worry about as well. And then finally they do a hearing check on all newborn babies in the UK, and she failed her hearing check. We were told it was probably nothing to worry about. It happens quite often. They get fluid in their ears during whilst they're in the womb, and that it would probably just be fluid that would come out at some point, and that would be fine. We were released from hospital at, I think, somewhere between 11 o'clock on the Sunday evening and 1 o'clock on the Monday morning, and I had gone to... I'd obviously driven us home, and Luna woke up a few times in the night, and obviously neither of us had really slept in the hospital at all. So my girlfriend at the time, she was exhausted, I was exhausted, but I knew she would have to look after the baby all day, so I took the night shift. Got up at 7 in the morning, got myself all sort of washed and ready for my new job, drove in. They'd kindly given me a parking space for my first few days because they knew about my situation, because normally new people parked somewhere else and were given a free bus ride in because there wasn't enough parking. Got in, and first sort of obviously the training group all got together and went into a classroom. There was about 20 of us, and the first thing the trainers asked me were, how is everything with the pregnancy? And I said she was born on Friday, and they said, oh great, congratulations, when did you get home? And I said about 7 hours ago. And they said, oh, you must be so tired. And I was, but it was fine, we got through the day. And then whilst I was still in training, Luna went for her proper hearing tests, and they still didn't pick anything up, and this time they were slightly more concerned, so she was booked in again for a final hearing test. And she went to the final hearing test, and they checked, and she had no hearing in either ear, or they might pick something very slight up in one ear, which obviously came as a huge shock to all of us, to myself, to my girlfriend at the time, to my parents. I forgot to add, during the pregnancy, my dad had said to us that because of our situation financially, that they would sell the house, they would buy a bigger house where we would have our own floor, and we would all just live together if that would suit us, which it did. So that's what we did. So that's what ended up happening. So we were still living with my parents at this time. So yeah, we found out she had no hearing. I'm not going to go into that too much in this video. I'm just going to say that what they eventually found, she obviously had lots of tests. She's now 5 years old. That seems like a long time ago. She obviously had lots and lots of tests over the first few years, and what they found was that on one side, her left hand side, she has no cochlear nerve, no cochlea at all, which is what helps us hear. And on the right hand side, she does have a cochlea, but it is so severely deformed that the hearing loss would be 95% plus. Now, there are things called cochlear implants which people can have, and if they can't have those for whatever reasons, they can do a brainstem insert instead. She didn't need that. She has a cochlear on one side. So what they did was they specially designed a cochlear implant for her side where she does have a cochlea. She's had that since she was 2 or 3 now, and she's accessing sounds well. She's starting to talk really well as well. She's very behind, obviously, so she talks like a 2-year-old, but she's 5. So if you see her in any of my upcoming vlogs and you wonder why she's not talking or why she doesn't sound quite normal, just because she hasn't had access to that hearing all of her life, so she's learning from the start, basically. But yeah, that was not easy for us, finding out we obviously had a deaf daughter. And then after about 5 or so months in my new job, I'd had no health issues whatsoever. I was absolutely fine working a desk job, not a problem at all. I'd had 1 or 2 sort of sickness absences for just generic things like stomach bug, colds, that kind of thing. And then after about 5-6 months, something happened to my back, and I now recognise it as another muscle spasm. At the time, I had no idea what it was, what was going on. But it was progressively getting worse and worse. I was going to the doctor, and they were giving me pain medication. They were giving me muscle relaxants, but not a kind that were really having any effect on me. And meanwhile, at work, I was walking around like a bit of a hunchback. That was how bad it was. I was walking around bent over because my back was hurting so much. And every time I went back to the doctor, they were just saying, well, we don't know what else we can do. We've given you medication. You've just got to, we can arrange physio, which they did. I went to physio. They gave me a couple of exercises to do and said, see if this helps. I did the exercises. Surprisingly, it didn't help. Went back to the doctor, and they were just like, oh, there's nothing else we can do. So eventually I went back, and I took my dad with me. Not because I necessarily needed to, but just in case there was something I forgot. And whilst we were there, we said, look, there has got to be something you can do, because this is ridiculous. You're not helping at all. You're just medicating for a problem that you have not diagnosed. we need to find out what the problem is. And the doctor finally agreed, and he sent me off for an MRI scan. Came back, showed nothing unusual, and that was that. I'm not quite sure what that MRI was of, because it was 4 or 5 years ago now. Anyway, it just did not subside at all. The pain wouldn't go away. Nothing would help it whatsoever. So we arranged to see a private osteopath. And I was signed off work by this point, and I had been for a month or two, because I couldn't work like it anymore. It was causing too much pain and sleepiness and all of that kind of thing. So I went to see a private osteopath. He had an initial look at me, looked through my range of movement. The physio I had seen through the doctor previously had told me that there was nothing wrong, but I had hyperflexibility. He took one look and said, "You're definitely not hyperflexible." And he said, "You have got noticeable difficulties with your mobility." And he said that is because all of one side of your back has gone into spasm, and that's left all the pressure on the other side, essentially. So what he did was he did some work on me in that session, and said, "Come back in a week or so, and we'll do some more work, and we'll gradually notch it up a bit." So kept seeing him, saw him a couple of times, and then we began to discuss what could be causing it, what the problem was. And he'd seen obviously the scans, because I'd taken copies of the scans that I'd had done, and my sort of doctor's reports and all of that kind of thing. And he had a few ideas of what it could be, but the main initial feeling that he had was that it was a condition called ankylosing spondylitis. What that is that's a condition whereby the bones at the base of the spine fuse together, and it basically causes, obviously similar to fibromyalgia, a lot of pain, a lot of back problems, a lot of mobility problems. And the kind of scan I'd previously had done hadn't been for that part of my back. It had been, I think, higher up. So he immediately wrote to my GP and said, "Can you please arrange for a scan of this part of Jamie's back, so that we can establish whether or not there is any of that kind of fusing." There's also a blood test that you can do, which isn't definitive, but it's a good indication of whether or not you may have ankylosing spondylitis. And there's a specific, I think it's a gene that they look for, and I think it's called the B27 gene. I could be wrong, so please don't take my word for that. So I went and had this blood test, came back all clear. They found really low vitamin D levels. They put me on vitamin D supplements. Vitamin D is also a lack of vitamin D is also a cause of some of fibromyalgia issues, and it's also a common problem with people with fibromyalgia. Went for the MRI, came back all clear again. Went back to my osteopath and said, "These are the results, everything seems all clear." And he said, "Okay, what I think it is I think it could be this thing called fibromyalgia." And I said, "Okay, fine. How do I find out that for sure? How do I get a diagnosis for that?" And he basically said that it was very difficult to get a diagnosis for it, because you have to rule everything out. There is no test you can do, there's no scan you can do, there's no blood tests, there's nothing that you can do to determine that a person has fibromyalgia. It is literally a case of ruling everything else out. Now, we'd already pretty much done that with the scans, the blood tests, all of that kind of thing. We'd pretty much got there, but doctors can't, or at the time couldn't really diagnose fibromyalgia, or seemed unwilling to. And being an osteopath, my osteopath couldn't either, because that's literally not what he does. So my dad arranged for me to see privately a rheumatologist called Professor McGregor, who is the leading rheumatologist on fibromyalgia in the country, and who happens to work at a private surgery in Norfolk, near where I live. So went along to see him, went through all the details with him. There was lots of questions. I told him about my entire story. He asked me to strip down to just sort of underwear, and to lay on the kind of medical couch thing, and he felt along my body and pushed for tender spots. Now, we'll go into this more in the mini series that's coming up, but to make you aware, fibromyalgia sufferers have, there's a couple of names for them. I like to use the term pressure points. Some people call them tender spots or trigger spots. I like pressure points though. So there's some pressure points along the body whereby a light, and when I say light, basically if you push with your finger and the nail goes white, it doesn't take a lot of, obviously I've got different coloured skin, so it's a bit more difficult, but if it goes white like that, it's not a lot of pressure at all. If you do it yourself now, you'll feel it's not a lot of pressure, but if you put pressure on one of those pressure points, it will hurt the subject or the patient. He was doing this with me, and I reacted and visibly said ouch to every single point he tested. I think there's 17 of them, and they're in various different places throughout the body. They are symmetrical, so they're the same on both sides. People frequently accidentally get them on me, and they're not only active when you're flaring up either. They are active all the time for fibromyalgia sufferers. So Luna, for example, my daughter, will lean on me somewhere, which I don't mind at all. She's 5, she's my daughter, she can lean on me. Sometimes she'll lean in just the wrong place and it will hurt a lot, and she'll look at me as if to say, what just happened? And I can't explain to her, obviously, because she's deaf and she doesn't have that level of understanding yet. So all I can say to her is, that hurt, but you can lay on me wherever else, or lean on me wherever else. So if you want to look up the pressure points, I'll leave a link down below. I'll also pop them on screen very briefly now, so you can have a quick look at them. So yeah, these are the pressure points. Press them and they hurt a lot. Lean on them, they hurt a lot. All of that kind of thing. Not a nice experience. So anyway, going back to the story. So I got off the couch, spoke to Professor McGregor a little bit more, and he said yes. He said yes, I believe, and I'm diagnosing you with fibromyalgia because I believe that is what you have. Now, prior to that, I had been back to the doctors and I had said, it looks like it is this. Can you give me some medication that you think would help me with this? So they gave me some antidepressants called citalopram. I think they gave me painkillers, again codeine I think, and they I think started me on naproxen. They either started me on it then, or they started me on it shortly after the diagnosis. I can't remember which. And naproxen's basically just like a strong ibuprofen, essentially. It's a non-steroid anti-inflammatory. So, and Professor McGregor said, yep, that's pretty much the standard treatment for fibromyalgia, that and sort of physio, exercise, those kind of things. So happy with that. Away you go. I will refer you back to myself on the NHS, so you come and see me on the NHS and just make sure everything's okay, and we'll go from there. So went to see him again a few months later. By this point I was using a walking stick, to help me walk, because my balance was often off. I was often very weak, and not only that, but most of all, if I'm flaring up, if I've got the walking stick, I can walk slightly further because it makes me less tired, because I've got something supporting me. It's not just my body doing the work. So it's an energy based thing as well. And I make sure that if I'm going away somewhere, I always have that with me in my luggage, whether that be in the UK or abroad. So after the diagnosis, I went back to see him a few months later, and he discharged me. He said there's nothing else that we need to do here, and he said that it depends on the individual, but he said there is a prospect of this just going away in some time, or becoming less of an issue, or he said it could potentially just continue as it is. He said there's no real way of knowing. He said, but in a young person like yourself, I'd like to think that it will probably go away at some point. Anyway, so I was on these drugs. I was still at home, still off work. There were days when I was laying in the bath crying in pain, would spend all day laying in bed because of pain, missed a lot of Luna's first year or two because of it, which I now really regret. I can't take that back, and it's not necessarily my fault, but I wish that I had been able to see her grow in those really early stages a bit more, because I love watching it now, obviously. But that was the situation. And anyway, eventually I got to a point where it did start to ease up, and I did start to feel a little bit better, and I agreed to return to work with specialist desk equipment, so a special chair, a desk that I could raise if I wanted to stand at it, reduced hours to suit my needs, that kind of thing, and all that kind of thing. So went back to work, and everything was okay. Was still in a pretty bad way, but I was slowly getting back to a relatively normal life, just in all this pain. And then it got to January of 2019, and we booked a family holiday, the five of us, my parents, my girlfriend at the time, and Luna, and we booked to go away to Kefalonia together in Greece. And I thought, right, that's it, I'm going to do what I can to stop these fibromyalgia symptoms and to get fit for holiday, because by that point I had gone up in weight to about 192 pounds. For reference, my normal weight is about 150 pounds, and when I'm doing sports and things, it's normally 140 pounds. So I was a lot heavier than my body is used to it being. So I had to start really, really light. Started going 5-minute walk in the evening with my mum, with my walking stick. A couple of weeks later, that was 10-15 minutes walking stick. Another couple of weeks later, that was 20 minutes without a walking stick. To 3 months later, going for a 30-minute cycle ride in the afternoon back home. And then in the evening would go for a 60, 70, 80 minute walk, and then a half hour, 45-minute run. I was in such a good shape, and I'd brought my body weight back down to 150 pounds, which is what I wanted it to be, just in time for holiday. Carried that on whilst I was on holiday, had an absolutely great time, and felt really, really good, really, really good. Now, shortly after we got back from holiday, my girlfriend at the time and I split up. I'm not going to go into any of the details, and nor will I ever on this channel or any other channels. Luna lives with my ex, and lives kind of almost near Gatwick actually, so about 2.5 hours away. I see Luna once every 2 weeks at the weekends, and I have her for half the school holidays. Again, not going to go into why, I'm not going to talk about any of that kind of thing. We will leave it there. That obviously had a huge impact on me as well, especially because for the first 8 months after that split, Luna was living with me, so I had to kind of change my work shifts again. I had new bosses, I had new work life stuff, new sort of working times. I was looking after my daughter pretty much full time. It was really difficult, but I got through it, and I got through it without flare-ups, and it was really, really good. And then in February 2020, I think, sounds about right, it was decided that Luna should go back to live with her mum. So that's what happened, and for the first good amount of time that was really difficult on me, and flare-ups were a little bit more frequent, but and I kind of let things go again, and pretty much since then I've been in this routine where I've kind of been living my life as a normal person and dealing with flare-ups as they come. What I will say, and I forgot to say, is that in January of 2019, when I decided I was going to get rid of the symptoms as best I could, I came off all medication apart from omeprazole, which is a medication for IBS, which a lot of people with fibromyalgia suffer from. How it affects me is I get severe heartburn to the point it cripples me, and without my omeprazole I suffer really badly and can't function. So that's the only drug that I remained on, and since then I've lived a relatively healthy life. I have had flare-ups with moderate frequency up until about a year ago, when I spoke to the pain management clinic. The pain management clinic put me on a drug called duloxetine, which I agreed to go on because the doctors had tried me on amitriptyline, which is another antidepressant since then, and I didn't take to it at all, didn't like the side effects, didn't want it anymore. This was all in a bid to try and reduce the number of flare-ups I was having. So I was having between 5 and 7 a year. Duloxetine I'm on a relatively low dose of. It gives me no side effects apart from really vivid dreams, mostly nightmares, but I enjoy them, so that's fine, because I'm a bit of a weirdo. So the only drugs that I'm on a permanent basis are the omeprazole for my irritable bowel syndrome, and the duloxetine to try and reduce the level of flare-ups I get. It has been successful. Rather than 5 to 7 a year, I now get 2 to 4 a year. Going through one right now, as you know. You'll see from the vlogs that are going to be coming up shortly, because I've been documenting them. This is being filmed on the 23rd of June, and the vlogs are from around the 11th of June onwards, so I will post them in date order, just obviously not around the same time, so I'll probably be okay by the time they're released. So yeah, I've also recently, so I did go up in weight again to about 180 pounds, because I started eating more, started just enjoying my life. I've decided again to try and lose weight because I flare up less when I'm at a lower weight. I don't know why. I guess it's just because it's less strain on my body. So I'm trying again to lose weight. I've done really, really well so far. I'm about 15 pounds off of my target weight and about 25 off of my preferred weight. I will hopefully in the next few weeks, next few months, be joining a football team, a soccer team if you're in a country that calls it soccer. which I haven't done for 10 years, but I really want to get back into it because I miss it. So that's really good. But with these, when I do get the flare-ups, so I often just deal with them, just carry on as normal, just rest, just relax as best I can. I carry on working because I can work from home thanks to COVID. So I'm in the office officially twice a month when I'm well, but I normally try and make it in once or twice a week. When I'm flaring up, I just stay at home, stay in bed if I have to, but I do continue to work if it's a minor flare-up. If it's a more severe flare-up, like the one I've got at the moment, then obviously I take time off work. And at that point, I'll call the doctors and ask for medication. They'll normally give me a prescription of codeine for the pain. Now, I don't really feel that codeine really works for me anymore. I think my body built up an immunity to it because I was on it for on a repeat prescription for a year, so I feel like I'm kind of immune to it. And I also asked them for diazepam. Now, the doctors are really funny about diazepam. It's the only thing that will help me with my muscle spasms, which is the one symptom that I get every single time in my back, which makes it really painful. Some of them will give it to me happily, some of them won't at all. So it got to a point where I asked for another referral, or for a referral to the pain management clinic, which I mentioned earlier. And they wrote a letter to my doctors saying Jamie is to be given 10 milligram diazepam when he's flaring up to aid with his muscle spasms. So now when I phone up and say I'm having a flare up, can I have some medication? They say, yeah, we'll give you some codeine. And I'll say, can you give me diazepam as well? A lot of them argue and say, no, we don't give that out. And I say, look through my records, please, because you'll find a letter from pain management saying that I do need it, and then they'll give it to me. So that's good. So I've currently got those medications now. I don't take them regularly when I've got them. So yesterday, for example, I didn't take them at all because I wanted to give my body a day's break. Wasn't a great idea because around 8-9 p.m. I was in agony, so I took some then. Some days I take them only once a day. Some days I take them twice a day. Very rarely, in fact it hasn't happened during this flare-up, I take them 3 times a day. So I'm very, very sensible with them. I don't use them anywhere near as often as I potentially could. So they are there just for my relief. I have booked in to see a private pain specialist in the next few weeks because I'm still a little bit irritated with the experience I have every time I phone my doctor when I'm experiencing a flare-up, and also because I've read about a new medication. I'm not going to talk about what that medication is right now, but it's supposedly very, very good for fibromyalgia patients. And when I brought it up with my doctor when I phoned them a week or two ago about this current flare-up, they were extremely dismissive and just said outright no. So I want to have an in-depth discussion with someone that I know will A, listen to me, and B, give me the right feedback and will help me with a plan to go along. So I'm seeing a special pain management specialist soon. I'm going to try, if he'll allow me to, I'm going to try and film it for you guys. If he says no, that's fine. You just have to hear about it from me afterwards. Yeah, that's where I'm currently at. I'm currently very healthy when I am healthy. I'm just like a normal person. I can play sport, I can go for runs, I can do anything that anyone else can do, can lift anything, I can carry my daughter, I can do all that jazz. When I'm flaring up, completely different story. I'm tired, I sleep a lot, I'm in a lot of pain, use a walking stick, I can't carry my daughter, I'm exhausted. Just a lot changes, and it's really difficult, and it's the same for a lot of fibromyalgia sufferers, and that's the whole reason for doing this channel, for creating this channel is to raise awareness, and that will be coming over the next few weeks with the mini series. That's going to be all about fibromyalgia, not me, not anything to do with me and my history. It's all going to be purely about fibromyalgia itself, and we're going to be delving into the depths just to help people gain an awareness for it. But that was everything that I had to talk about from myself. That's my story, that's all about me. thank you ever so much for watching and for supporting me. That first video has had 3,000 likes in its first 4 or 5 days, which is incredible, so thank you so much for your support. If you do like the video, do please give it a thumbs up. If you've got any questions, comments, queries, any suggestions for the future, do leave a comment down below. Most importantly, if you enjoy it, if you want to learn more, or if you're a sufferer yourself, do go ahead, subscribe, click the notification bell so that you get notifications when I post a new video. They will generally be on Fridays. Check out my other channels down below as well, because I've got a few others, and spread the word. If you enjoyed it, pass it along to your friends, family, anyone you can think of, and I'll catch you on the next one. Thank you ever so much for watching. This has been About Me.